This is the Transforming Anxiety podcast with mindfulness teacher Kelly Hanlon McCormick. And today is episode number 270, Words to Stop Saying. My intention for this conversation is that we take a handful of words and pause with them to consider if we need to be saying them or thinking them, if they have any room in our self-talk or our conversations. Welcome in. It's the Transforming Anxiety podcast, episode number 270, Words to Stop Saying. I'm so glad you're here. Hey there. Welcome in today. All right, so I wanted to take some time today to hone in on some of the small everyday words that we toss around and suggest that there are a few that we could basically eliminate from our conversation. Because pretty much across the board, when these words come up, there's a deeper meaning behind them that infuses whatever we're thinking or saying with something yucky. And like most things we talk about, some of this is unique to you. You'll have to take this. You're going to have to make it yours. These aren't universal prescriptions that I do here on the podcast at all. But a lot of this is also common enough that we can all resonate and relate to it. So use these as a jumping off point for other words that could get banned from your vocabulary and just see what comes up. I would love to hear what else you come up with, what things you say or think on a regular basis that just really doesn't work for you. So reach out to me. You can find me at my website, kellyhanlonmccormick.com, which, okay, wait, one little housekeeping thing I should have said first before we get started today, and that is I have something for you. I have a short and sweet 6-week course to help you feel less anxious this fall. And with back to school and an election here in the United States, we have upcoming holidays, we have the shift in seasons upon us. We all want to feel less anxious. The class is called Be Mindful, Not Anxious. We're going to start on September 16th. It's a couple weeks from Monday. It's going to run for 6 weeks every Monday at 11 a.m. Central. And we are going to be learning, we're going to be practicing real tools so that you know what to do when you're feeling anxious. You'll know how to slow down anxious thoughts, how to deal with anxious feelings, and how to create a more steady and grounded feeling for yourself as you move through the days and really just the rest of 2024. So we're going to deal with anxiety head on in this class. I'm really looking forward to working more closely with you because the podcast is good fun, but I really love when we get to hop on Zoom together and interact and practice together. So you can go to my website, kellyhanlonmccormick.com/be mindful, not anxious. Like all one word, be mindful, not anxious. You'll find all the info, the dates, what we're going to learn. It's all there. You can also get signed up over there. And if you have any questions, just email me. I'm totally happy to answer anything on your mind so that you know if this class is right for you. All right, I'll keep reminding you until that one starts, but be mindful, not anxious. It's open now, and we will start September 16th. One more quick note, if you can't make the class live, and I know that's a big thing for people, I will be posting replays as soon as possible. We have a community forum, so you can still get a lot of interaction and you can ask me questions there. So please don't feel like you're missing out if you can't make it Mondays at 11 a.m. Central. There's no perfect time that works for everybody. I just had to pick something. That's what I chose. So even if that time doesn't work for you, please don't think you're going to be left out. We will make it work. Come join us anyway. Okay, back to words we need to stop saying. You ready? Let's hop into this topic. I've been taking notes for a little while on this one since I had this idea. Just words that are super common in everyday conversations, things we just toss around to ourselves, to each other, like they don't mean anything. But words matter. Words absolutely matter. how we are talking to ourselves in our own heads, how we think, what we believe, what we say to our kids, our friends, our family, our colleagues. It matters. And there are some words that I think we need to take a good, hard look at because I don't think they're working for us. And like I said at the beginning, take this list and make it yours. Take what works for you, chuck the rest, and be willing to add your own words to this list. Things you want to ease out of your vocabulary. I'm a really big fan of consciously curating our lives. Let's just talk for a moment about this. You know how museums have curators, right? Museums hire people to pick and choose which pieces and which exhibits they will display at their gallery or their museum or whatever. And there's a limited amount of space. They can't have everything. So they have to choose the pieces that best showcase and best display what they want to convey. So there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of deliberation that goes into curating a museum or a gallery's exhibitions. I want you to think of your life and your mind this way. You can't just think anything. You can't just say anything. I mean, you can, but if we consciously curate the words and phrases and vocabulary that we use on a daily basis, we change things. We can create things. We can be purposeful and we can be intentional about it. So, a few words that I want to suggest we collectively eliminate from our daily conversations and the way we talk to ourselves in our minds. All right? The first is the word hate. I hate that place. I hate tomatoes. I hate that candidate. Even if we're not talking about people we know personally, and maybe particularly if we're talking about people we know personally, I want to caution against using this word. This word has some serious mojo, doesn't it? To say we hate something, I should say seriously bad mojo. To say we hate something, it's such a dead end. It's such an energy killer. Do we need to hate it? Or could we just instead dislike it? Prefer something else? Because I find it's always so much more powerful to be for something than against something. When you hate something, it's like you tie yourself to it in a strange way because you wind up spending energy and effort focused on that thing or that person or that place or whatever it is. Why would you want to spend more time and energy dealing with something you don't like? No, it's more powerful to be for something, to love something. So if you find yourself starting to say you hate something, see how you can flip it around and love something else. Now, I know, obviously life isn't always this simple. Obviously, you can't always just pick the opposite, right? This doesn't always apply, but it does sometimes. So use it when you can. And when you can't, just see how it feels to sub in a softer word, a kinder word. Even if you're clear in your distaste and your dislike, you can be very, very firm and still not exercise hatred. And this will change how you feel. Big time. Okay, another one. This one's a bit more subtle. This one probably requires some context, but let's talk about the word just. All right? There are a few ways that this word is used that do not serve. So think about when you say just in an effort to downplay something or diminish something. I hear women say this sometimes when they talk about staying home with their kids. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Oh my goodness. Don't do that. Do not trivialize that. It's like we're inviting this, it's not a big deal, I don't do much attitude when we couch something in just. Another thing we're doing is beating them to the punch. Like if we think it's not going to be seen as a noble or a lofty endeavor, we go ahead and downplay it so no one else can downplay it. It's like we steal any goodness in it by just saying just in front of it. I just wanted this. I just do this. I just am like this. Like, imagine it this way for a second. Say it like this. Instead of, I just want to read my book for a little bit, say, I want to read my book. Instead of, I am just an elementary school teacher. No. Say instead, I teach elementary school. Instead of saying, here's a good one. Instead of saying, it's just that I get a little anxious about places with big crowds. No. Say it like this. I don't like big crowds. Sometimes I feel anxious. This is really, really subtle, right? But do you hear that shift? This ownership? This sense of, that's right. This is who I am. All we have to do is delete the just in front of it. We don't need to steal from ourselves. We don't need to diminish ourselves. I like to kind of gamify things for myself. So if that resonates with you, if you're also a gamifier, I like to invite people to give me their thoughts. Let them say it. Oh, you just work from home for yourself. Oh, you just do yoga. I'm like, yeah, damn right. I have my own business. And I don't run. I don't do CrossFit. I don't go for super long, fancy, impressive bike rides. I practice yoga. Yes. No just. Those are not little things. That's what it is. Fully and wholly. And I want to own that. So try that one out for yourself. No just. It's what it is. Claim it. All right. Next one. This one you could maybe guess if I asked you to come up with some ideas for this podcast. The next one is the absolutes always and never, right? Pretty much anytime we're deploying these words, we're in trouble. There are so few absolutes in life, right? And try this on. When we say something is always like this, or it never works out, or whatever it is we're claiming, we point things in that direction. Because one super common use of these words is when we're complaining to someone about their behavior. Okay? You always say this. You never do this. And when someone comes at you with language like that, it's really hard to get motivated to do much else. You with me? If someone tells you that you always overreact, it's not like you feel super inspired to calmly respond and ask questions and get more information. No, it's like a lightning rod for defensiveness, and you start putting walls up and you snap back. Same thing with never, right? Someone says, you never pick up after yourself. I'm here to tell you, I don't think that's the way to get you to start, right? So when we start saying always and never, it's like we start making it true. You always do this. You never do this. We're asking people, or people are asking us to do the thing that we're claiming, right? If you have kids in your household, look for this. See if you use this with them. And I am here to strongly encourage you to knock it off. It is a dead end in any relationship, but particularly with children and with teens. It is a way of telling them a story about who you think they are, and it kills any conversation or curiosity or inquiry. It's just like, boom, this is who you are, end of story. With the subtext, and it ain't good. So, let's just not. Like I said, this is a connection killer in any relationship, but stay specially attuned to this with your kids. Okay, a couple more. How about obviously? Now, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I've already said obviously in this podcast. So I'm not looking for perfection here. I'm not looking to strike these words from the English language. I want you to be conscious of how you're using these words. That said, I don't know if I often hear this word said aside from maybe like a factual stating of something very neutral, very just black and white, which is not common. And even then, I don't know. I think I might stick with my original statement, which was to say, I don't think we can use this word without a little snub, a little snark being implied. There's just no real kind and generous use of it, I don't think. Obviously, kind of assumes, at least in the way I'm thinking about it, you don't get it. If I say something and then I tack on an obviously, it's like, well, duh, you dummy, don't you see? So I guess there's other uses of the word obviously, but you know what I mean, right? When we tack on obviously. Because again, this one can shut down conversation. And that's probably the through line here in this episode, is that I'm always looking for ways to connect, ways to open up, ways to support and encourage more communication. And a lot of these words just shut things down. When someone says obviously to you, it is really hard to say, well, it's not obvious to me. Could you explain it? Like, that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to go there. If you could make the same comment, but leave out the obviously part, there is a much better chance you're inviting questions or at least further conversation and communication. And again, I think of parenting and kids here. When we have babies and toddlers, it's easy to remember that the whole world is brand new to them, right? We explain everything. We don't expect them to know or understand anything. But as our kids get a little older, we start to shift our expectations. And then they get a little older again. And when we're talking to them, it can be tricky to remember that this is still a kid, right? Maybe they're teenagers, but I mean, let's be honest, they don't have any experience in the real world, right? Their friendships are getting more real, but it's brand new to them, how to navigate those relationships. Their schoolwork is getting more serious, but that's brand new to them. They don't know how to stay organized. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to take care of their time and their minds and their bodies. They also still don't know anything, right? And we forget. So we need to take the obviously out of the conversation and imagine, now this is with anybody, kids or otherwise, imagine for a second that it's not obvious. Do this with anything you think is obvious. Like, what if it's not? What if it's obvious to you only because of your very specific past experience or a lesson you had or a knowledge base that you've amassed, but it's not even remotely obvious to most people? Now talk about it. Now approach it. It's totally different that way. I also think this one can exclude people. Like, there are groups where certain knowledge is, obvious, right? An entry into those groups or a way of feeling like you can or do belong, it can be blocked by a lack of information. So if there's something that's obvious to a whole group of people, but it's not obvious to you, you can wind up feeling like you can't get in there. Like, again, back to parenting examples, my younger son started a new sport this summer. He started playing tennis, and he had never done it before. He didn't know anything about it. Like, nothing was obvious to him, right? But then just last week, he went back to school, and he started up again on the cross-country team. This is something he did last year. It's something he's familiar with. So that one is much more obvious to him than tennis was, right? We see examples like this everywhere. Kids and adults and activities and hobbies and work and sports and politics and just life. sometimes things are not obvious. And I think it serves everyone to eliminate the obviously remark and instead ask something like, do you have any questions? Or how can I help? I don't know. Again, try it on. See what you think. I'd be curious to hear. And, okay, I saved the best for last. This is another one you probably would have guessed. But how about should? Yeah, this one's tricky because, again, it shuts things down. And I know you've heard this before, right? Don't go shoulding all over yourself, all that funny stuff. Should is everywhere, and the more aware of it you can be and stay, the better, I think. Again, this one is with your own self-talk in your head, and this is also in conversation with other people. So let's start with other people first. Like, try telling someone what they should do. That's always fun, right? You know what you should do? You should have done this instead of that. You shouldn't ever do it that way. People really love that, don't they? And I know you know because you've been on the receiving end of that and you've had someone toss a should your way. And it just feels awful. We could do a whole episode on this, but I want you to try this on instead. Really think about this. You ready? I have no idea what anyone else should or shouldn't do. Because that is true. We just don't know. We don't have any clue what anyone else should or shouldn't be doing. So shoulds being tossed in another person's direction? No, we just don't know. That's not a meaningful conversation. But arguably, the more yucky use of this word is the should that we get from ourselves and the greater, quote unquote, they, right? What we assume they think we should do, or what we think they expect from us, right? The shoulds of how we look, where we work, how we parent, what we should eat, where we should vacation, what we should own or not, and do or not. All the shoulds from culture and society and our families of origin. We also have these ideas and pressures on ourselves, what we should be doing, how we should be better or prettier or further along or smarter, or man, we just should have it all figured out by now. I mean, I know you've heard this before. I know this isn't brand new information, that should isn't exactly an uplifting or good feeling word to be using, but I had to include it here, right? In talking about words to stop saying. It's probably the biggest offender on this list. Should. Right? How many dreams have been erased because someone should be doing something else, something more responsible, something more in line with the expectations? How many relationships have been thwarted by a should that came along in the form of miscommunication or shaming out of fear or insecurity, not a lack of love or desire? Right? How many lives have been directed down narrow, well-traveled roads simply because that was what was always done and therefore expected, because there were so many shoulds littered along the way that there wasn't room for possibility or potential or creation. Yeah. So, should is pretty much king of them all. Words to stop saying. Now, again, this is just a handful, just a few that I see in my everyday life, things I try to be really mindful around, in my own head for sure, but also in conversation. And again, really look for this stuff as a parent. Model what you want your kids to hear in their heads. Our shoulds and justs and obviously's, they didn't come from nowhere. All right, that's it for today. One more reminder that Be Mindful, Not Anxious, the fall mindfulness class where I will teach you how to feel less anxious this season. It's open for enrollment now. We'll be together for 6 weeks. It's only $59 for the 6-week class. You'll have practices and meditations you'll get to keep and work with forever. Be mindful, not anxious. We're going to start on Monday, September 16th. You can find out more. You can get signed up over at kellyhanlonmccormick.com/be mindful, not anxious. Okay, I will see you next week at the same time, same place for more Transforming Anxiety. And until then, please take care. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for doing this work alongside me. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and your family, anyone who, could use the support and the guidance, who could use these teachings and practices. Thank you for sharing your stories with me, telling me about your experiences and asking your questions. I'm here with you. Let's do this together. Transforming Anxiety.